And then we read in verse 10, Then the servant took 10 camels from the camels of his master and set out with a variety of good things of his master's in his hand. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at evening time, the time when women go out to draw water. And he said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today, and show loving kindness to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. And now may it be that the girl to whom I say, Please let down your jars so that I may drink, and who answers, Drink, and I will water your camels also, may she be the one whom thou hast appointed for thy servant Isaac, and by this I shall know that thou hast shown loving kindness to my master. And there we can also see something further, that in seeking for a partner for Isaac, having arrived in his hometown, he knew that Abraham had said, You have got to get one of my relatives. And of course, he could have gone there and found out where Abraham's relatives were and gone to their house, but he doesn't do that. He says Abraham's relatives may have many girls in their midst. Which one will be the one for Isaac? You see, applying it to today, we can say there are many believers, there are many believing sisters. But which is the one whom God has chosen? That was this servant's concern. Which is the one whom God has chosen? And so he prays. And because he prayed in sincerity, he got an answer. He asked for a very clear sign, and he asked for a difficult one. See, sometimes when someone's pretty keen on marrying someone, they may ask God for a sign, but we got to count on our flesh there, that we can ask for a sign which can very easily be fulfilled, because we want to get married to someone. We got to be careful there when we ask for signs. If you want to ask God for a sign, ask for a really difficult one. And then you'll know whether it's God or not. He asked for a difficult one. Just think of that. He stood by the well of water, verse 11, at evening time. He didn't go to the little social club in Ur of the Chaldees to see the sophisticated girls who would come there to see if one of them would be suitable for Isaac. The type of girl who goes to the social club is quite different from the type of girl who comes to draw water at the well. Quite different. The social club types don't really know how to work with their hands. They are most of the time sitting in front of the mirror and decorating their faces. But Abraham's servant was not looking for one like that. He was looking for someone who knew how to work with her hands. And so he says, if there's a girl I must get for Isaac, it must be the type of girl who knows how to draw water from a well. And not just draw water from a well, but when I say to her, Please give me a drink, that she is so courteous that she answers, Drink, and I will water your camels also. That's where I said the sign was a hard one. You know, a camel is called the ship of the desert, which means it's got a fantastic capacity to store water. And to draw water for one camel would have been quite a job. And it says here in verse 10 that he had 10 camels. That's really a hard sign. Who in the world is going to volunteer to give water for 10 camels? In addition to all the water she's come to collect for her home, that she says, Sure, I'll not only give you some water, I'll give enough water for all your camels. That was a really hard sign. That was not an easy one. But you see the wisdom of that servant, that he asked God for a sign, and yet there was more than a sign in it. He was saying, Lord, lead me to a hard-working girl. A girl who's got blisters in her fingers. Not these soft, delicate types who know how to pull the rope and whose hands are rough. You see, in the book of Proverbs, we have spoken about that the woman mentioned there is one who's got rough hands and a soft tongue. And the delicate girls usually have a rough tongue and soft hands. And we should never be so stupid to invert this. It must be rough hands and a soft tongue, and not the other way around. And that's what he was looking for. He was looking for in Rebecca a soft tongue. Sure, drink and I will give water to your camels also, and rough hands that are willing to draw water for 10 camels. May she be the one whom thou hast appointed. Notice that phrase, the one whom thou hast appointed. Not one of the two out of which I can select. Notice that phrase, the one whom thou hast appointed. In the whole Bible, there are only 2 marriages arranged by God. Only 2 in the whole Bible that we know definitely were arranged by God. The first was the marriage of Adam and Eve, and the second was the marriage of Isaac and Rebekah. There are other marriages in the Bible, but we don't know whether God arranged them or not. But in these 2, we have clear indication that God arranged them. In Adam's case, we know clearly that it was God who brought Eve to Adam. And here also, as we read this chapter, we see that it was God who brought Rebekah to Isaac in a supernatural way. In Genesis 2, it was without any human agency. God supernaturally brought Eve to Adam. In Genesis 24, it was through human agency, through a father and the father's servant, teaching us that even today God can lead us in one of 2 ways. Either directly, without human agency, directly to the person whom He has chosen for us, or through human agency, like in Genesis 24. God is the same. And He still arranges marriages either with or without human agency. But in both cases, in Genesis 2 and Genesis 24, we notice one thing, and that is that He did not select 2 or 5 and give the man a choice, which one do you like? God didn't make 5 women for Adam and say, now which one do you like? And Abraham's servant didn't bring along 5 girls from Mesopotamia and asked Isaac, well, I brought 5, you can choose one. In both cases, you find one significant thing, there was one. And I wish all young men and women would believe this. Some don't believe it. There are believers who don't believe it. That there is the one, like it says here, the one whom thou hast appointed. But those who have faith for that, they receive according to their faith. And it's a very blessed thing in marriage to seek for, to use the phrase here in verse 14, the one whom God has appointed. The one whom God has appointed. And he prayed and he sought God. He didn't consult others. He knew that he couldn't go merely by recommendation. There are people who say, how can we know what the girl is like? How can we know what the boy is like? I tell you, it's impossible if you don't know God. In Western society, they date one another to find out what each other is like. That's a deception. Because when a boy and a girl meet together, they're always on their best behavior. No, it's not that way. What about recommendation? That depends on whom you ask. Somebody may have a personal interest. Most people in the world are partial. It's very rare to find a human being in the world who has so cleansed himself from partiality that he is totally impartial, even among those who are in the new and living way. Tremendous amount of partiality. So what shall we do? Even we go to a good brother, but he's not free from partiality. He's got a sympathy towards certain people and antipathy towards certain others. And it's rare to find a really godly person who is completely neutral, completely free from all partiality, who's got no favorites, and who's not this way or that way. So you see, it's very difficult. Of course, if you can find a brother like that, you could rely on that person's word, but they're very rare, 1 in a million sometimes. But we can trust God, where you can't find a brother like that who will give you an honest, impartial opinion. We can trust God, that God will lead. Whom did Abraham serve and consult in Mesopotamia? His case was more hopeless than any of our cases. Think he was going to a strange country, and he had to pick out the one. It's really an impossible situation, but God did it. Adam's was more impossible. There wasn't any girl in the whole world existing, and God created one for him. All these things are to indicate that the two cases mentioned in the Bible of God-ordained marriages were, humanly speaking, more hopeless than any of ours, and yet God did it. And that's for the encouragement of those who feel that my case is so hopeless, how can God lead me? It depends on your faith, brother and sister. It depends on faith. If you can trust God, nothing is impossible. God can lead you to the one whom He has appointed. And there is one whom He has appointed somewhere on the face of the earth. And if He sees that it is your longing, then He will test you by bringing a Canaanite across your way first, or by allowing you to see some girl who doesn't want to leave Mesopotamia or wants to come halfway to Canaan. And when He sees that you're really not interested, that you take that position that Abraham took, I would rather be single, I would rather let my son be single than marry someone who is half-hearted, then God will lead you to the right person. So it's important that we pass the earlier test and seek God's best in this. And then we read, it came about before he had finished speaking. It's a very wonderful promise in Isaiah, I think 65, it says, before they pray, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. Before they call, I will answer. Because your heavenly Father knows that you have need of these things, we read Isaiah 65:24. Isaiah 65:24, it will also come to pass that before they call, I will answer, and while they are still speaking, I will hear. Before they call, I will answer. In other words, before we begin to pray, God's already prepared the answer. I mean, you've got to believe that. If a young 27-year-old man says, Lord, please lead me to the person whom you have appointed, the chances are God must have worked on the answer to that at least 20 years earlier. It's not that he suddenly decides to let some girl be born somewhere. He's already got the girl born many, many years before the person prayed. So it says here in Genesis 24:15, before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor, came out with her jar on her shoulder. It's amazing, the sovereign leading of God. I want you to just think of this, the beauty of it. This man had traveled for 450 miles, all the way from Canaan to Mesopotamia, and he had probably taken 30 days. And think of the timing, that God's got it all worked out so wonderfully that the moment this chap lands up at the well, after this 30-day long journey, and prays this prayer, the next girl who comes there is Rebekah. You can't arrange it better than that. It's amazing what God can do. He's got it all worked out when Rebecca should start from her home and timing it so that by the time this person comes to the well and prays about it, she'll be near the well and she's there. It's amazing what God does in this area if you can have faith. This whole chapter is a beautiful picture of the sovereignty of God in bringing two people together at the right time. That person starts out on this long 30-day journey at the right time, and this girl starts out on her 15-minute journey from her home at the right time. And they meet bang on time at the well. Think of that. It's wonderful. You can't do it better than God. And blessed are those who can commit their cause to God and let Him work it all out for them.